One of the most exciting battles in the first round of the Tata Steel Masters 2022 was Magnus Carlsen taking on Andrei Esipenko. The reason for the excitement was that in the last edition, Esipenko had beaten Carlsen, and it was the first time they both had played each other, and Magnus, had lost the game. It was a very good game by Esipenko, the youngster. And this time they were paired against each other in the first round itself. So everyone was very excited to see if Magnus would get his revenge as well. Also, Magnus has put this thing that he wants to cross 2900 ELO in the near future in classical chess. So every game is very important. It's a nice picture of Magnus and Esipenko looking at each other. And this is how they greeted each other before the start of the game, and this is them playing against each other. These are pictures brought to you by Lennart Utis, who is one of the official photographers of the event. But what happened in the game is very, very interesting, and I want to take you through. This was the final, kind of the finalish position where they drew in just 21 moves, and something was missed by Magnus somewhere. And this is what we want to discuss. So we've taken black on our side. It's Magnus who is black. Esipenko is white here. And what I want to say is that when a player of Magnus's caliber misses something, we try to think a little deeper as to why would he have missed that. Not that, oh, he missed it, because definitely Magnus would have thought about it. But here is something very interesting. Let me get to the position. So d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, c6. It's the semi-Slav. e3, knight bd7, queen c2, b6. So one approach is to, play for d takes c4 in such positions, but only after the bishop develops. Here maybe Esipenko would have anyway gone for b3. So Magnus went b6, b3, bishop b7, bishop d3, bishop d6, castles, castles, bishop b2. All very straightforward. Here lines go like rook a d8, or rook a c8, or rook f e8. There is also queen e7. Then you can bring your rook from a8 to d8. There are many ways in which black plays a waiting game, because the moment you play c5, white has a ready-made target on d5 and also can play against hanging pawns by taking on d5 and c5. But also white has an idea of pushing e4 in the position, but that too, if you push it too soon, then after takes, then eventually if black can engineer the c5 break, then he would have a good position. So because of all these reasons, both sides usually wait. Like white also brings all his pieces, bishop f1, g3, bg2. These are the plans. But here he played the move c5 instantly, and it has been played, but not so frequently. cd, nice move by Esipenko. Magnus took back with the pawn, and he brought his rook to d1. Magnus played rook e8, makes sense, taking the semi-open file, rook a c1, a6, bishop f5, and now rook a2, c8 was played. So when this move was played here, Esipenko took on c5, and pawn takes c5 makes a lot of sense because you now have hanging pawns. And in such positions, anyone who has played with the hanging pawns would know that black's main idea is at the right moment to play d4. Because the moment you play d4, you unleash your very powerful bishop. So white has to be very careful against such moves. But Esipenko here went for knight a4. Already, I think a player of Magnus's caliber should be thinking of this d4 break, because it is the main idea in such positions. If you think about it, Esipenko has a threat, which is to take on f6. If you take with the queen, if you take with the queen, then the knight on d7 is hanging. And if you take with the knight, then the rook on c8 is hanging. So that is the problem. But d4 answers both the problems, because one, you push d4, you have blocked this bishop, you have also unleashed your own bishop. And here's the point: after e takes d4, you take the knight, he must take back. And now it's an important move. I would like you to pause this video and try to figure out what should Magnus do in this position. Black to play. So the move here is knight to d5. A very, very nice move, because now you're preparing queen h4 or queen g5 check. Also, one of the points is that then the queen moves to f4, threatening h2. And here, if you take here, then after queen h4, white cannot even take on d6 because the queen is hanging. And because of these reasons, this position is lost. And also, if you see here, there's another move that you can check. Take here, I give a check. If you try to block, I go here, and now my threat is queen h2 and queen h1 mate. Notice how the rook on e8 controls the e file. So d4 was very natural here, and maybe Magnus Esipenko cannot take this. It's already lost, and he might have to play this very uncomfortable move like knight d2. And you can already sense that black is doing very well. You know, you can pull your bishop back, you can move your queen here. There are many possibilities, and it's a nice position. Okay, never mind. Magnus went rook c7. He was of the opinion that if you take on f6, now I can take back with my knight. My rook is no longer hanging on c8. Everything looks good. If you take on d7 here, I'll take back with my queen. Bishop c3 was played by Esipenko, and now he is really threatening this. But on the other hand, he is just asking for it. He's asking for d4. And this time it even hits the bishop. Like if you take ed4, bishop f3, gf3, knight d5, that's the same concept all over again. And black is doing very well in this position. Knight d5, let's say dc5. This time the only difference is that the queen wouldn't be hanging. But still, let's say after queen g5, bg4. And now if I play queen f4, there is cd6 here happening. But I can take with my knight. And then after, let's say, knight takes, I can take. Now there's even no need to take this. I can play queen f4 because my bishop is not hanging and black is winning. Maybe after d4, white goes bishop a5 because that was his idea, to pin like this. But then we take on f3. Notice you can't take on c7 here because I will take on d1 first, attacking your queen as well. So you have to recapture. And now a very cool move, knight e5. This is a very important move in this position, and maybe Magnus could have found it. And f3 is hanging. So if you take here, I can take on f3, king here, and now two ways to play. One is knight, maybe knight h4, king here, and now you can take on c7, which looks good because this king is just extremely weak on h4. One can go queen c6, threatening queen g2 with g5 mate in the air and all sorts of things. But you can also play a little bit more flashily with queen a8, and if king h4, then queen g2 with the idea of g5. That is game over. And if you take on d6, that's also a mate with g5. So if here you, instead of taking on c7, you try to play queen e2, trying to defend, I would once again ask you to pause the video and find the best move for black. Queen a8, putting pressure on f3, and let's say after e4, I can go knight h5, threatening knight f4, and all in all, black has complete control on this position with great pieces. And once you see d4, you start seeing all these variations. In the game, it ended with queen e7. He attacked. Magnus went up. He went back. Magnus went down. He went there. And they agreed to a draw. What is very interesting is that in the post-game conference, when Magnus was asked about this d4 move, he said that he had not seen it at all. I will link this interview in the description so you can have a look at it. but it comes to me as a big surprise that a move like d4, which is a very common idea in this hanging pawn structure, was not seen by Magnus. Not only does it equalize, but it gives black a good advantage in this position and nearly a winning advantage in this position. So it was a very, very important move to be seen, and it only shows that even a great champion like Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, can also have off days in chess. I hope you like this video. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.